And welcome to the SBK Betting Podcast. Tom Collins here alongside Ross Miller. We are on the back of a fantastic week of flat action. We'll start with Newmarket last week, where Godolphin just dominated with Desert Flower winning the 1,000 guineas and also ruling court in the 2,000. We then went to the US and Godolphin dominated. They won the Kentucky Derby with sovereignty and the Kentucky Oaks with good cheer. A four-timer that hasn't been seen before across the globe. Guess what? At Chester this week, Ballydoyle 4 straight back. Ryan Moore dominant. It's just been a great week of action when it comes to flat racing. Talking of four-timers, we put up four winners on this podcast last week, Ross. You had Ruling Court, who I already mentioned, at 9-2. I had Sovereignty at 7-1, or 33s if you've been following since October. And we both put up Jade de Grugy, who won the SBK Irish Mares Champion Hurdle down at Punchestown. Ross also put up Simmering each way in the 1,000 guineas, and she ran very well for a place at huge odds. Ross, you spent the weekend in Punchestown last week. How was that? And also, did you manage to catch any of the classics?
It was really good, TC. I was there Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. A bit of a working holiday, but really enjoyed it. And the one thing I would say is it's the first time I've seen Constitution in the flesh. I was disappointed. Obviously, we didn't get the clash, but I had a friend that was meant to be coming over, couldn't make it. He was on the phone actually as they walked into the paddock, and he was able to tell over the phone. He said, "They've just come into the paddock, haven't they?" The noise came up, and it stayed up until William Mullins had doffed his hat for, I think, the third time for the crowd after State Man had won. It was the most exceptional atmosphere I've ever seen on a racecourse. It was disappointing that from Flagfall, really, the way he jumped the first hurdle, you could tell Constitution Hill is still not back to where he was, and whether he'll ever get there, I'm starting to doubt. We didn't get the clash, but just the atmosphere. And as soon as the race had finished, it went empty again. And I should think half the people that were there just to watch that. And then it went lots of young people. It was really good. And yeah, I did watch the classics. Ruling Court, I was actually on anti-post through Juvenile Watch Racing TV. And after his first run at Sandown, I thought I was being very shrewd. He'll win his group race next time. And then, of course, he got beat. But, you know, played a long game and he came back. I thought he was an impressive winner. Certainly for a horse, it looks like he's going to stay further.
Yeah, it was fantastic, wasn't he? Obviously, William Buick was fantastic on him. Didn't manage to get cover in the early part of the race, but he made his move early before they went into the dip, and that was key. We can talk a little bit about the ride from Buick, but obviously the focus of social media and subsequent news has been about Kieran Schumacher, the jockey on Field of Gold. That horse finished second in the 2,000 guineas. He was the best horse in the race. I don't think anyone can really say that, even if you bet the favourite. I don't think you could say that he wasn't the best horse. Subsequent news, broke by Nick Luck originally, but it's obviously all across social media by now, is that Kieran Schumacher was dropped by John and Thady Gosden as the number one rider. And moving forward, they're going to be adopting a best rider available policy that we have seen from quite a few training operations over the past couple of years. Ross, firstly, did you think it was a terrible ride from Kieran Schumacher? And secondly, do you think it was the right move for them to drop him?
No and no, TC. I don't think it was a terrible ride. His interview, I thought, was really good. You know, Matt Chapman gets a lot of flack, but I thought he was very good explaining his initial opinion, then getting Kieran Schumacher to do an interview explaining his. The thing that stuck in my mind was that Kieran Schumacher said that he felt there was two positions he could have taken. Well, that to me says that he had clearly been absolutely tied down to get cover and to not let the horse race freely, because if he wasn't, there was any number of positions he could have taken. He could have got in front of William Buick. He could have gone anywhere he liked. To me, it smacks of an operation that they perhaps don't have full trust in Kieran to be able to ride without instruction and to do what he feels at the moment. So he got tied to two places. He rode him where he had to ride him and get cover. Yes, I think he probably was the best horse in the race, and he probably would perhaps be the highest rated miler at the end of the season in that race. But I thought if he was an absolute superstar, he had time to go and pick up Ruling Court, I think. And then in terms of dropping him, I think it's a really poor move. I think it's a classless move, if I'm absolutely honest. If you're going to take on a young rider and build forward, you have to take that with the knowledge that they are going to make mistakes. And his mistake was that he didn't acknowledge that there was not enough pace and that on quicker ground the horse wasn't going to come through the dip. Well, I don't think they're particularly bad areas of judgment to make. When you then factor in that the magical Italian that they wax lyrical about made a myriad of mistakes in his last few seasons riding for John Gosden, and actually got sacked because he wasn't doing his job properly and then got brought back in, I think it's a poor move. And I was just saying to you off air, Thady Gosden, Kieran Schumacher, we're assuming that Thady will eventually take over the licence in his own right eventually. By the end of Kieran Schumacher's career, I wouldn't be at all surprised if he's ridden more group winners than Thady Gosden has been involved with in the training ranks. I just didn't like it, really. I thought it was a little bit chucking him under the bus.
Yeah, I don't disagree. To be honest with you, I think the dropping of Kieran Schumacher was the wrong decision. As you say, it wasn't like Frankie was completely clean in his riding career for the Gosdens. He made plenty of mistakes. Okay, granted, he was one of the best jockeys around and he won plenty of group races for them. Kieran maybe hasn't had as much luck since taking over the reins, but equally, he hasn't been riding as good a horse as Frankie was generally riding. He had a 30% strike rate for the Gosdens. Dettori had 33%. I don't know. I feel like it's tough. Look, Kieran Schumacher has made a couple of mistakes, but I think there were some mistakes last year that were far worse than what we saw on Field of Gold. And I tried to get that across in a tweet on Saturday, but I instead took pelters for not slating Schumacher, which I think was a bit ridiculous. Look, I was on Field of Gold. I wanted him to win. I thought it was a 6.5 out of 10 ride from Schumacher, to be honest. I didn't mind getting back in the field early. I didn't mind getting cover. I didn't mind the fact he switched out, and I didn't mind when he pushed the button. Maybe he could have gone a little bit earlier, but William Buick just rode him out of position, and that's why Buick's was an 8 out of 10. Schumacher 6.5. It's unfortunate for Kieran, but for the horse itself, Field of Gold, I think there's a big future ahead of him, and he's definitely going to be winning plenty more races. Okay, from the past now to the future, and we're going to be looking ahead towards Saturday's races. A quick note before we go into our individual previews that SBK is offering a 20% horse racing ACCA boost, minimum 4 legs to qualify. T's and C's apply. Go check that out on the SBK app. The first race we'll preview this weekend is the Oaks Trial down at Lingfield, the 1:15 p.m. This race was initially penned to go at 2:25, I believe, but because of the small field, it's now the first race on the card. Just 3 runners, and Giselle for Aidan O'Brien is your 1-4 favourite at the time of recording. Big price is the other 2. Ross, this is going to be pretty simple, right? Giselle just wins?
Yeah, I think she does, TC. It's a pretty disappointing, Oaks trial, isn't it? As you said, maybe Lingfield haven't done a good enough job with the ground, and it is a bit rattling quick at this time of year, and they're coming down the hill and round the bend, and it's weak. She should be winning this. Whether she's an Oaks filly outright, I'm not quite so sure. I think you're a little bit sweeter on her. I was quite taken by Minnie Hawk actually earlier in the week at Chester. I liked what she did. With regards to the Oaks, I'm still looking towards Falling Snow. Actually, I was really impressed with what she did last year. We haven't seen her since. Waiting for her to come out, I thought she looked like she could be quite special. But yeah, if Giselle isn't winning this, then there's something very wrong indeed, I would think.
Yeah, it's a pretty weak race, as we've kind of touched on. There's no point of labouring the fact that Giselle should win. She's a short price. I'm sure plenty of you watching this won't be wanting to bet at 1-4 or 1-5. So we'll move on quickly. But what I will say about this filly is that I think she does have a bright future. I don't think we'll see the best of her this weekend, first time off the layoff. But she has one of the best pedigrees of any horse that Aidan O'Brien has. And believe me, there are some good pedigrees in there. By Frankel, out of a mare, a dam called Newspaper of Record, who, if you haven't been watching any US racing over the last 10 or so years, she is one of the best turf fillies that we have seen. She raced for Chad Brown and Claridge Stables. She loved firm ground, so the ground this weekend should be no problem for Giselle. And she was a proper Group 1 horse. So if that pedigree translates onto the track for Giselle, I think she'll be a top-class filly later in the campaign when she's fully fit and ready to go. She should win this race on Saturday regardless, and she will be my tip for podcast purposes anyway. We'll move swiftly on. We'll go to the Derby trial. This one's a little bit more interesting, though I don't know how good it is, Ross. This race is run at 3 p.m, and again, Aidan O'Brien seems to hold all the keys. He has Puppet Master, who tops the betting, Ryan Moore's Choice. Prior to jockey bookings, this horse was actually second favourite behind Aidan's other horse in the field, which is Stay True. But Richard Kingscote picks up the ride on that one, and the market has flipped, as you would expect. Ryan usually gets first choice. Who do you like in here?
I just want to be against. I say against. If Puppet Master goes and wins, it wouldn't be at all surprised, and it wouldn't be at all surprised if Stay True did either. But just at the prices, I wanted to side with Princesses. He's had a prep run, as has Puppet Master, obviously, but he had that prep run round Epsom. He handled the hill and the bend really well at Epsom. He didn't handle the camber up the home straight very well at all. He lugged into his left, which didn't help him. He finished 5th, stayed on, I thought, quite well. But Hector Crouch gave him a fair bit to do. He was out the back for all of it. It did look very much like it was an educational ride to get him down the hill and around the hill. And I thought he did that well enough. So, given that there's similar topography, Epsom to Lingfield, I thought that was a positive. He'll definitely improve for the step up in trip. He's by Sea the Stars at the Sadler's Wells mare. He's had the prep run. I thought he was interesting, and I was quite taken by his maiden win when I went and watched it back last year. I thought he looked like a horse with a little bit of ability. The family all stay really well. Puppet Master, obviously, he's had the prep as well, and the Ballysacks form, I think, is going to work out quite well. I quite like Delacroix from last year. Thought he was a horse that was going to step forward. And then, I mean, Stay True could be anything, couldn't it? It's whether Ryan has gone for Puppet Master because he's got more experience, or whether they're telling him that there's a big difference between them in their work at home. But big chance for Richard Kingscote anyway.
Yeah, it really is a good opportunity for Richard. He's had good opportunities with leading trainers over the last few years. Sir Michael Stout obviously being one with Desert Crown, but subsequently picked up some nice rides. And to get in the door at Aidan's is definitely a positive. One quick word before I say my selection in the race, Ross. Obviously, being a horseman and being around horses all of your life, Prince of the Seas, last time, yes, hung down the camber, hung left. We've seen that plenty of times at Epsom. Prior to that, at Sandown, when he won, he hung right. Why would a horse have a tendency to hang either way? Obviously, the camber can be a reason, but what about Sandown?
Yeah, so it's strange. If they hang one way, straight away up, my initial thing is to go and look physically that they tend to hang away from pain. Can be muscular pain, can be their teeth, can be a number of things. The hanging at Sandown, I thought was quite babyish, but certainly at Epsom, you'll see it time and time again that he got onto his left lead coming down the hill, and he wasn't quick enough to change to his right lead to sort of take himself into the camber, and he sort of rolled down the camber at Epsom. It's certainly a concern if he does it again. You'd mark him down for a horse that's going to be better on a flat track. But I did like how he came down the hill. He entered the hill at the top on his right lead. And he changed quite nicely onto his left lead. Came down the hill, I thought, quite balanced. My understanding is that Lingfield doesn't have the same sort of camber that Epsom does. So I hope he'll be all right. But that would be the concern, and certainly something I'll be watching for. And I think that's probably the key. We're saying that these are particularly exciting betting mediums. You should really watch them and watch them again in terms of informing you going forwards.
Yeah, exactly. Interesting points regarding hanging there, because I do think most people who maybe aren't as clued up and just kind of guess at situations, they would either presume that a horse hangs because they don't like the track, which is the case quite often, but also that the horse is hanging because they don't want to win. And I think there are other reasons for it rather than just a lack of willingness. My selection in the race is going to be Puppet Master. I understand it's boring. I understand that I've picked two Aidan O'Brien horses at short prices so far, but I do think he's the clear standout. To be honest, I think this is a particularly weak renewal of the Derby trial. I don't think there are many group horses in this field, maximum two, and Puppet Master is the only one that's proven at the moment. He finished fourth last year in a group race, came back in the Ballysacks, as Ross has already said, also finished fourth. Tender handling that day under Wayne Lorden, was only sent off 9-2, so Connections quite clearly thought he was capable of going relatively close, and the form is working out, as Ross has already talked about, with Lambourne and Delacroix having that upside moving forward. So Puppet Master for me, I think he's just way the horse to beat, and if he can improve on that Ballysacks effort, I think he's definitely going to take this race. From Lingfield to Ascot, and the final race we'll preview in depth, and that is the Victoria Cup, the 240 at the Royal venue. Now, this race is very deep. It's a competitive heat. We've got 11-2 favourite, and that is Kirat for Rafe Beckett and Jobmont. 7-1 bar. Where's your money going?
Oh, my money. Is my money going? Yeah, no. English Oak for Ed Walker. I just can't get away. I think he was probably one of the most impressive Royal Ascot winners last year. He's had two runs at the track, second over 6 furlongs, won that Buckingham Palace off a mark of 99 by 3 lengths and won it very impressively indeed. So much so he went up to a mark of 108. He went into group contests after that. And he probably wasn't quite up to group contest, but I do wonder whether that was down to lack of experience as opposed to lack of ability. I still wouldn't be completely surprised if he's a group horse in the making. Dropped back to listed company at Newbury, 7 furlongs, ran really well, finished second, hung, but he was reported to have lost his shoe. So we just talked about hanging. He'd lost his shoe and he sort of seemed to hang into that lost shoe. He then came back and made his debut or his reappearance this year, and he absolutely fell out the stalls, gave himself no chance whatsoever. He's come down £2 from that, so down from 108 down to a mark of 106. Ed Walker's really caught fire the last couple of weeks, 23% strike rate. It's gone abroad and landed a couple of decent pots as well. So I do like English Oak in a very competitive race. Stall 6, I very much take the view at this time of year at Ascot that I don't want to try and waste my time, as I see it, looking for where the draw bias is, because we see year on year that we think we know which side it's going to be, and it changes with the watering and the track drying out from the jumps ground as well. So stall 6, we'll see what we make of that.
Yeah, interesting run at English Oak. If he can bounce back to his best and he's a huge player, my one question mark about him was his mark of 106. Last year, he made a mark in the 90s look easy, but will 106 be as simple? He was the last horse off my shortlist, to be fair, so I can completely see the angle. In regards to the draw, I actually think you do want to be high, but then I looked through all of the high drawn horses and I couldn't really find one that I loved. So I've also ended up going with horses drawn middle to low, maybe kind of at my detriment, but we'll see. I've got 2 in the race. My favourite of the 2 is No Retreat for George Scott and Callum Shepherd. This horse had a huge reputation last year. He was sent off odds on the debut, looked really green and raw, didn't get the job done. Then went to Windsor for a pretty winnable race. You've got to go back and watch the replay. I don't know how he didn't win that event. He was ahead, 1 stride before the line. James Doyle kind of cocked the horse's jaw at the line and he somehow lost. There is an interview about that. And then he subsequently lost again at a short price. I think it was a red car. Then they sent him over to Dubai after those 3 slightly laboured efforts in Maiden Company. And he looked way better over at Meydan. He finished placed on 3 of the occasions and won over 7 furlongs. This horse has a big turn of foot. He likes fast ground. I think if George Scott has him ready first time up, this is his first start for the trainer, then he's going to be a huge player at 10-1. I think his mark is very fair. So watch out for No Retreat. He could explode and win this race nicely. The other horse at a bigger price I'm interested in is Hickory. Now, he isn't as appealing from a profile perspective, but he is 25 or 33-1, depending on which platform you look at. So the price is huge and you're kind of taking a small risk to get a huge reward. He ran 4th in this race last year off a mark of 89. Now he's rated 85, so he's £4 lower. We know he likes the track. He didn't get a dream run through 12 months ago, so maybe he was value for a little bit better than he showed that day. First up for Jamie Osborne, middle draw. Again, Hickory is slightly interesting in this race at a big price. So I'll play No Retreat in Hickory, but that is a really good betting heat, the Victoria Cup. I'm looking forward to it. Okay, it's nap and next best time. We've previewed 3 of the races. 1 very uncompetitive, 1 in the middle, I suppose, and 1 very competitive. Ross, there is plenty of other action elsewhere. Obviously on the undercards at Lingfield and Ascot. There's some jumps action over at Haydock. Where are you going?
Yeah, jumps action at Hexham as well, and Warwick, I think. But I'm going for my nap to Ascot. I'm reading the SBK memo. It's flat season. 205 at Ascot, Fillies handicap. Charlie Johnson trained Arisaig. I had her on my list actually as a nap or next best last week. She was entered over a mile in a furlong at Newmarket, and they ended up going to Goodwood for a mile handicap. She's a filly that needs to come late in a race. She needs to be held up and settled, and she's run at Goodwood plenty of times because Johnson's like going there, and it never really works out. She tends to find traffic. She did so last time, finished 5th, but that was a listed contest. I thought she shaped far better than the result. She's backing up quite quickly. That would be the concern perhaps with the filly at this time of year. But Charlie Johnson just starting to find a little bit of form. I think this stiff track will suit. That said, she didn't run very well when she tried this track once before on good to firm ground, but I'm prepared to give her a second chance. I like Callum Shepherd. I think she's looking like a filly that's just coming to hand. So she'd be the nap in the 205 at Ascot. Her name is Arisaig. And then my next best, I was going to stick to the flat and put up Military Code, the Godolphin horse, in the 130, but I've just got a horrible feeling that against a bunch of unraced rivals, he might go off very short. So I've left him out. I've jumped to Haydock for the Evan Williams trained Patriotic. Isabel Williams on board. He ran really well at Toxteth last time, good to soft ground. I thought he was given an awful lot to do. And he finished runner-up to a Dan Skelton horse who was particularly well handicapped. We'd followed him over a cliff actually this season. I thought it was a really strong run, and I'm just not sure Toxteth suited him. Quite twisty, a little bit undulating. When you look at his best form, it comes on flat galloping tracks. He won at Doncaster on his penultimate start. He'd won a couple of times at Foss last year. I thought he was a little bit ground dependent and wanted a bit softer ground, but he's proven to show that he's got a bit of speed on this better ground. I wouldn't be at all surprised if Toxteth last time, coming with a bit of a late run, had half an eye on an end of season target or early season target at Haydock. So in the 1 o'clock, Patriotic will be my next best.
Yeah, just to clarify there, Arisaid, Nap for Ross at Ascot in the 205, and next best is Patriotic in the 1 o'clock at Haydock. A couple of early picks in the afternoon there, so hopefully we're celebrating before we get our featured races. My nap is going to be a horse we've already talked about, and that is Puppet Master, who goes in the Lingfield Derby Trial at 3 p.m. I won't go through all the reasons again, that will definitely be boring, but what I will say is it's a weak race. He's the best horse, he's got the best connections, and with fitness on his side, hopefully he can get the job done at around 6-4 at the time of recording. My next bet is going to be a bigger price. I think around 13-2 at the moment on Thursday. And that is Great Generation in the 335 at Lingfield. I don't know about the horses at the top of the market in this race. Cathedral was a breeze up filly for Ammo Racing, looked really good on the debut, then disappointed. She has had plenty of issues. Jabara ran in the US last time, ran only 6th behind Choicia, another UK horse. Quick turnaround after the trip back from the US. I'm not sure about that. Maybe this race just is there for the taking for Great Generation, who has course and distance form, loves fast ground, has plenty in her favour, and she's won fresh before. So she's a nice price and is a horse that's worth looking out for if you're looking for a little bit more beef on the bones when it comes to value. Thank you very much for watching this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you did, please whack the like button down below and subscribe so you don't miss out on any future SBK podcasts and videos. A reminder that SBK is offering a 20% horse racing ACCA boost on Saturday. Minimum 4 legs to qualify for this. T's and C's do apply. Also, all new customers to SBK will get £30 in free bets when you sign up and place your first £10 bet. T's and C's apply there too. It's definitely worth doing to take advantage of that offer and the horse racing ACCA if you like doing that kind of bet. Finally, if you're going onto YouTube is a little bit painstaking and you can't be bothered every week, then just go over to the SBK app because you can listen to our horse racing podcast over there on the horse racing page. I'm sure you'll find it just with a few clicks. Thank you again for watching. Hopefully we found some winners this week. Leave a comment down below with one horse that you like on Saturday, and we'll see you soon. Goodbye.